everyone. Welcome back to the Peaceful Mompreneur. I'm excited to introduce my guest, Katherine Sellery. She is a three-time TEDx speaker, founder of the Conscious Parenting Revolution, and a trusted voice for parents, educators, and leaders seeking to create more connected, respectful, and empowered relationships at home and in the workplace. With over 2 decades of experience, teaching the tools that build trust and dismantle power struggles. Katherine is here to shift the conversation around how we communicate, lead, and live. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us.
So great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm delighted.
Absolutely. So today we are going to be talking all about letting go of perfectionism and building trust in your family and your team. And I know that's a tall order, letting go of perfectionists. I am not a perfectionist necessarily, but I know a lot of them, and I know how hard that struggle is to be able to let other people in and to let you help them, right? So let's start from the beginning. Why is this important to you, and how did you start teaching it?
Yeah, no, I was just kind of chuckling there. I guess you could say I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's so depending on your nature, I guess, and depending on the household that you grow up in and the influences around you, we get the message that we have to be perfect. And so I think it's one of the most common problems in society right now, actually. It underpins, I think, self-esteem issues, is that there's this something inside that was told and conditioned to think that mistakes were not okay.
Mm.
And that oftentimes, I guess for me, one of the distinctions I make when I'm doing my trainings is I help people understand that while someone could make a spelling mistake, it would never occur to you to punish them for that, because our expectation is that they would never know how to spell words. They have to learn. And so that's fine. If you're having trouble spelling, obviously we need to teach you how to spell. And so there's an expectation around that that gives us a lot of space when people make that mistake. But with children and behavior, we seem to have a different expectation. It's not as though we look at that like a spelling mistake. It's as if they should have known, or that they should be masters of their emotional realms, and that the developmental expectations could potentially be way off base around what is normal mistaking, if you will. And so therefore there's an impression that kids get that they shouldn't have been like that when we adopt rewards and punishments to respond to behavioral mistakes, rather than, oh, this is just like spelling. There's no reason that they should be perfectionists and have mastered their emotional realm at this age, or often we see it quite late in life where people are still working to manage those big feelings. But a perfectionist will respond by coming down hard. If they don't learn, if I don't teach them, they won't learn. And so as a result, we move into this land of creating an impression that it's not okay to make mistakes.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So from that, how do we change the way we think, right? Because you're absolutely right. At least in America, the only society I've ever lived in, right? We are very much, we're told like, you teach your children this way. And I've never even thought about it like as a mistake, like a spelling mistake, right? So how do we change our thought process to be able to understand that they're just not there yet and that we have to, continue to teach them?
Well, education is very helpful. And I spent 35 years in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
And so a lot of my trainings were expat communities, whether it was the Hong Kong Chinese or other Chinese communities that were living in Hong Kong, whether it's mainland Taiwan. And then, of course, pretty much every nationality. It's a very expat community. So what I've learned is that it's not really about nationality, that this mindset is so prevalent, it exists everywhere, that I think all of us as humanity have grown up with a system that just needs a reboot. There historically is a negative view of children. And the underpinnings of the negative view of children, we see it in, Dickens and a lot of, the writings, is that when children make behavioral mistakes, there is this mindset of they've got to learn. And when children make mistakes that are more developmentally understood, like spelling mistakes, there isn't. So this is a really big point that I like to bring up in my work, is that we have this negative mindset around children, that they're out to get us, that they should have known better. And the only way to overcome it is to become conscious of it. That's what we call it, the conscious parenting revolution, is that we can revolutionize our approach to children's behavioral mistakes by becoming aware of the negative bias against children's behavioral mistakes. So
Okay.
the idea that children were supposed to be seen and not heard, or they're supposed to behave, they're not supposed to ever have an opinion or a perspective. It's as though we believe children are not entitled to have a standing until maybe a certain age. So I call it ageism. And it's the type of ageism that we don't talk a lot about. My daughter knew a lot about it. At 5, she could say to me, Mom, that woman would never have spoken to you like this. So she could pick up on adults who had a demeaning perspective toward children, like, you shouldn't speak up. You're not entitled to have feelings and needs. That's disrespectful. For you to have a feeling and a need and not just mirror mine, or not just do as you're told. You're supposed to be obedient and compliant. Well, obedience and compliance is not learning consideration. Children and all human beings, I would like to say, it would be important to us that they learn to be considerate of other people's feelings and needs, other people's preferences, to be able to speak about, hey, I noticed that you really prefer for things to be done this way. I was wondering if you'd be willing to consider them being done another way. Hard for a child to have that conversation with an adult when the adult looks at the child as, that's sass. Do as you're told. Don't talk back to me. That's disrespectful. Go to your room. If you've got that tape running in your head, that children should just be obedient and compliant and not have perspectives, then unfortunately children learn that they don't matter. And then they get hell-bent on becoming perfectionists to be able to matter. Because if I could just be better, if I could just do perfect, I would then be worthy of love and belonging.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. So where would you say that there has to be some sort of balance, right? Like, we want your children to learn. There is a place for obedience and there is a place for listening, but also a place for learning how to be a whole person and with emotions and running, like, doing that. So how does someone balance the two? What does that
Good
look like?
question. Well, I think that when we look at children developmentally, as long as our expectations are realistic, and this is where I've noticed that people are really not tuned in to what's appropriate for a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. So this is where developmental charts become really helpful.
Okay.
And for us to be able to go, yeah, of course, my expectations for my 2-year-old are out of line. So there are some guiding principles. If you can't play nicely, you can't play. And then really, I guess you could say what the question then becomes is, how do we teach how to play? Is it go to your room? Is it a spanking? Is it what is the response to the mistake? I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the response to the mistake, we can look at authoritarian response, which would probably be something like go to your room, or you're grounded, or whatever, maybe even a naughty corner. I'm not really sure. But a preference to that would be, hey, we're going to work on this impulse control, and we can't hit other kids, and we don't grab. So you come over here and sit with me, and let's do something together. We could do a little art project, or we could read a book. And when you calm down and you feel like you're able to command yourself again and play in the group, then you go back and play. So it's not punitive. It's educational. It's supporting and what we call co-regulating. So if you have a little child who's out of regulation and dysregulated in their emotional realm, it's not because they want to be. It's because they don't have the standing internally to be able to regulate their emotions. So we help them. We co-regulate, but we don't punish them for being children, right? We have to understand that, well, this is child. This is what childhood is about. It's learning how to regulate your emotions. It's recognizing when you're in a group and playing with other kids, we need to know how to play well together. And it's not acceptable to not play okay with other kids, to hit, to kick, to pull. And so we take them out of a group, sit them down, and we say, hey, you know, we can't play like that. And sit with me. Let's do something fun together. Let's do a little breathing. And there are some exercises that I like to help parents do with their little ones to get them to get back into command of themselves. And then it's really helpful to say, that was really hard for you when you wanted to join the group and they wouldn't let you. And you had that big feeling come up if something was not okay about that because you really wanted to play with them too. There's always a story behind it.
Yeah.
You really wanted to play with that toy. It made you so mad when the person who owned it didn't want to share it. And it's really hard to accept the fact that people have agency over whether they want to share their toys or not.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as that might be for us when we really want to do what we want to do, when somebody else whose toy it is decides that they want to play with it, it's really hard to be okay with their no, isn't it? Sometimes no's are hard to deal with. So we make them into teachable moments and we support them with the big feelings that are coming up. How could you be with that feeling in a different way? So we start to educate them about emotional resiliency, overcoming big feelings, conflict resolution, collaborative problem solving. There are millions of skill deficits that your 2-year-old has, your 3-year-old, your 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So we start to support them with that. And so that they can learn the skills. But obedience and compliance is dangerous. I mean, the last thing we want to do is teach obedience and compliance. We want to teach consideration, conflict resolution, collaboration, problem solving, assertiveness. I mean, millions of skills other than obedience and compliance. That's the most dangerous thing you could teach anyone because children can never discern between who to be obedient to. Anyone in power will become someone that they feel they have to kowtow to. And we don't want them kowtowing to people with dangerous intentions. The largest study on child sexual abuse proves this without question.
No, okay, yeah. So I like what you're saying. I've been reading recently about like when you're given the example of like sitting down with the child. Like I have a 2-year-old, so that's usually what I'm thinking about, right? And so, and like talk, like when he has any kind of feelings, big feelings, instead of telling him he's okay or it's not a big deal or any of those things, letting him know that I understand, like I hear him, like he's allowed to have those feelings, right? Like I know you wanted to play with it. I know you wanted to do that. I know you wanted to do these things. It is amazing how much just telling them that I understand that he wants to do something.
Totally.
I mean, I'm not letting him do it. Like we can't do those things right now, you know?
Not. And we don't want to raise children who are inconsiderate, and we need to guide them. This is why my training is called the guidance approach.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, so in your training, you talk about you have tools and things that you teach. Can you give us some examples of things like more so than you've already done that we could use practically?
Sure, absolutely. So depending on the age of the child, if we're talking about a 2-year-old, I mean, they just got their little learning wheels on, right? They're just going out there and they're going to have big feelings about a lot of stuff. Probably every no they ever hear, they're going to have a big feeling around. But I like what you said, and it's certainly in the toolbox, is to be able to reflect back to them. It's really disappointing when you want something so much and you can't have it. That's so hard. I get why you're having such a big feeling around that. Would you like to breathe through with me? Right? So we can do a breathe through. One of the things that I do is we call it the magic 8. And I'm not sure if you're going to be showing the recording or just you will. Okay. So it's really, people can do this with me. You just take your fingers and put them in the middle of your forehead above your nose. And then you just make an 8 around your eyes. You can go in whichever direction you want. And you can play around with how soft or how much pressure. And you can also change the direction. And as you're doing that, what you're actually doing is you're breaking through that left and right brain and bringing them together.
Okay.
And you'll find that you actually naturally take a breath. And so you're really supporting your entire nervous system, which is what happens, right? When kids get the big feelings, what they're doing is they're in their frontal lobes. And we need them to take a deep breath and to be able to relax and get out of the amygdala and to be able to, recover. And so once they're recovered, that's when you can say to them, if you want to go back and try again, go back and try again. And here's an opportunity for you to, depending on how verbal or nonverbal they are, what you're basically helping them do by reflecting back to them how disappointing it is. is you're giving them the vocabulary to be able to know that that word matched that feeling inside of disappointment. And, that's a pretty long, big word, but you might start to hear your little guy go, I'm disappointed, because there's something called name it to tame it.
Hmm.
So the more that we have the words to name the experience that we're having internally, the more it feels acknowledged, seen, and heard and understood by me, the one voicing it. If I don't have those words, and pre-verbal kids get really upset and verbal kids with limited vocabularies get really upset, part of upsetness and the road to recovery is having the words to name it.
Hmm.
So mad, sad. I mean, we start with the simple ones, disappointed is kind of big. So you could just be in the mad, sad land initially. And getting to that point where I can begin to have conversations with my child. We don't look at the moment when they're upset as a teachable moment. So we don't teach when kids are crying, and we don't teach, that's not when you lecture and, try to teach them the value of sharing. We wait until they've recovered, or we use the moments when everything is fine as our moments for sharing ideas and topics that we want to instill in them, the values that we think are important around potentially something like sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a different viewpoint on sharing. My perspective is that children get to choose what toys they want to share. Just like I get to choose if I'm going to share my jewelry and clothing and car and all of the things that belong to me.
Mm-hmm.
That they also have some agency around choosing it. So not everybody sees it that way. They believe that you have to create forced compliance and make people learn this value, where actually the value is instilled internally.
Mm-hmm.
And the research shows that when you allow children to have that agency, eventually there comes within, just like kids will learn how to read and write and walk and all the rest of it, there is an internal impulse toward the joy of sharing. And if it comes at the right time, then it's not just something that's socially prescribed. It's actually heartfelt.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is really quite radical to allow that to emerge. But to force it, you're going to probably end up in the land of retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. So one of the reasons that we don't want to go into the land of obedience and compliance and the land of rewards and punishments is that it activates the 3 R's. So Dr. Thomas Gordon, if you know of him or not, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times on his research around activating retaliation, rebellion, and resistance by using power over and compliance-based parenting approaches. So what happens is you have one problem, and then you come down hard on it. Let's say that you want your child to clean up the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ask them to put their dishes away and they completely ignore you. And so you're like, all right, maybe you go into the 1, 2, 3 magic land. So all right, 1, 2, if you don't do this, and then you start your threats. And so you go into that territory. Well, what's going to happen is that, say you come down hard. All right, that's it. Fine, go to your room. So they run up the stairs, I hate mommy, and they slam the door. Mm-hmm. So now you've activated what we call the secondary problem by how you handle the primary issue. So retaliation, rebellion, and resistance account for 75% of behavioral disruptions.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And like I said, like we only have a 2-year-old, but I can definitely see that already, right?
Sure.
And so if we can just like do it in a different way and like figure something
That's
out, it's always better, right? And I think
always.
I don't know. I'm not like obviously not a parenting expert, a lot of stuff, but like I have found that most of the problems are my problem. He's 2. I can't expect my 2-year-old to be able to handle everything, right? And so if things are escalating, it's because I escalated them. And so that we just have to, work through whatever issues that we got going on, right?
So but yeah, you're absolutely right. It is so much about I have a problem because my expectations of my 2-year-old are way off base.
Yeah,
and that's so it's my mind and my thoughts about this situation that are actually activating my own emotional response. I triggered myself.
Right. Yeah.
I wasn't triggered by anything outside of me.
Mhm.
He's doing too perfectly.
Right. Yeah.
So absolutely perfectly. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, growing and developing and acting out and having big feelings. And, he's at the beginning of the road.
Hmm.
I'm the one who's impatient or has expectations that this shouldn't be happening.
Yep. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so I really liked what you said earlier too about how helping them with their vocabulary so that they can explain things better to you, make everybody's life easier, your life better, their life better. And we all want to be heard, right? No matter what age you are, we
Oh,
want to know,
yeah.
we want people to know how we feel, especially if we're feeling bad. And so I feel like I got this revelation or whatever from Charlotte Mason. You know what I'm talking about? She was an educator in the 1800s, and she talks about how children are whole people. It's big in the homeschool movement. They're whole people as they were born. Like when they were born, they're not becoming people. They're not vessels to be filled. They are people. And so she came at such a time where people were definitely looking down on children, and she had a completely different outlook on them. And I just love her philosophy. It's beautiful. I don't know that much about it. Maybe she said something crazy at some point, but for the most part, I really like her. And so what you're saying reminds me in part of what she talks about. So I really appreciate that.
Well, actually, I talk about the same thing. I mean, they are whole people. I
Mm-hmm.
look at them actually as our teachers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, our children come to us and they're the example I use is they really are Yoda.
Yeah.
They really are Yoda, and they're here to give us an opportunity to have empathy, compassion, understanding, to be able to see them as, these rich teachers that they are, because they will bring everything up, our past, I call it transgenerational trauma, whatever the trauma was in your family lineage about being seen and not heard. And I mean, everything will be triggered by your children. And every time, if you're somebody who thinks that other people make you feel, if you blame your feelings on other people and aren't responsible for the feelings that arise, then you're going to say they made you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to make them responsible for your feelings. And therefore, they need to be punished on account of how they made you feel. But of course, it's all a lie.
Right.
Nobody made you feel that way.
Nope.
There's nothing outside of you that is responsible or has the power to be in control of my feelings. But they do trigger us. They activate things, as does the rest of the world. So if we've confused having someone catalyze an experience that I'm having as if they caused it, then we move down the road of victim blame consciousness. And kids often end up in that land.
Yeah. Yeah. On this podcast, we talk a lot about radical ownership and radical surrender. And so we have to own the things that are ours and not be responsible for things outside of us. And I feel like that's a lot of what you're talking about. No one makes us feel away, and we can't make other people feel another way, right?
Exactly.
So we own ours and we let them have theirs, and we work together and figure things out. But that's a big thing here.
Exactly. Totally in alignment with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my teachers was Marshall Rosenberg. Are you familiar with Marshall?
No, ma'am.
The founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication and the father of restorative justice in America's prison system. He's passed away, but I was fortunate enough to train with him. He's a very powerful influence around NVC. So nonviolent communication and understanding emotional development. So he would say emotional development stage 1 was slavery, where you feel that someone else is responsible for your feelings and needs. And so you are enslaving them, right, to take care of your, feelings and needs. Or you might be the one enslaving someone else and duping them into believing that they're responsible for how you feel. And often children get enslaved in that way and made to believe that they make mommy happy, but they make mommy sad, as if anyone has the power to make mommy happy or sad. And so it is emotional and obviously abusive to put that on any human being. So he talks about emotional slavery as stage 1. And then he talks about emotional obnoxiousness being the next stage, where we become obnoxious once we realize that we've fallen prey to this. And so we say things like, well, don't put that on me. I have nothing to do with that. That's all about you. And he said, then we finally moved to emotional liberation, which is, I'm not responsible for how you feel, but I care about you.
Mm,
I see you're having some really big feelings right now. So, whenever you want to talk about it, let's sit down and talk, because how you're feeling, although I'm not responsible for it, I care about you.
yeah.
And if you're having a hard time, I care about that too.
Hmm.
So those are the three stages. And I think the liberation stage is when we get to be with each other and be responsible for our own feelings and needs, and yet be able to demonstrate the caring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I would imagine that's where we really want to be as parents, right? Liberated
Absolutely.
from them, like letting them control our, not letting, they're not controlling our emotions, but letting them dictate how we feel because we've allowed them to, but caring about them and being able to stay stable, right? That's what
Absolutely.
we want.
That is
What I
totally
want.
it. Yeah, no, that's exactly where we want to go. And it's, I think, the work of every parent, um, and people who are just in general struggling with this idea of separation and individuation. So my work really acknowledges that separation and individuation is often not allowed in families. Children are not allowed to separate and have an individuated experience from the caretaker. This is when the caretakers become triggered
Hmm.
because, you know, I said X, you're supposed to do X, but this person has a response to it that is obviously that they're not on board with X. And
Can
so
you,
when that happens, it's like, okay, I mean, I get that you're having your own experience. And so I like to say, when they say no to you, what are they saying yes to internally?
okay.
So, okay, what is your child saying yes to internally? What's going on for them? Well, I don't want to get up and leave the table, going back to my original example. You want me to clean up the dishes and put everything away, but I'm not done yet. And I'm having a really good time here.
Hmm.
And, I know you want to set the table and have me clear everything off, but I'm still really enjoying what I'm doing. Oh, I get it. So then you have to reframe internally in your own head of, this isn't sass, it's not acting out, it's not talking back, it's not being disrespectful. You can remove all the judgment and you can recognize that, okay, they're having trouble doing my directive and also staying connected to what was going on inside of them. So now at least I understand that this is about, how do I integrate the outer voice with
Hmm.
my inner sense of things? So then you have a different conversation around, all right, well, I see that you're having a really good time, and I get that, you'd like to keep everything just the way it is. I got a problem though. It's time for dinner and I need to set the table. What can we do about this?
Hmm.
And so we move into collaborative problem solving, which is acknowledging that everybody has a side, and yet, I got to keep the train on the track, and I got to get where I got to go.
Gotta get eat. Yeah.
So what are we going to do about this? And
Yeah.
that may result in a variety of different outcomes,
Mhm.
because they may have ideas. Well, can't we eat, outside on the porch, or maybe we could eat over here, and it's like, that's an idea. I never even thought about that.
Mhm.
And then I get to decide, am I okay with that or not okay with that? But at least it gives me something to take into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking, let's talk about that example a little bit more, right? So that child seems like they're a little bit older, right? If you
Maybe
had a
five,
young
4 or 5, yeah.
4 or 5, okay, yeah, yeah, I could see that. So, what would you do if the situation was even younger, right? So, let's say a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, they just are like, nah, man, I'm not cleaning this up, and so like they're not to a point, as far as I can tell. They're not having a conversation like that with you. Um,
Sure.
and so how do you acknowledge the fact that they have feelings and they don't want to clean up, but still like they're
It's got
not
to
going
get cleaned up.
to
Yeah.
suggest to go outside. So
So what I would do is I would say, I get it. Cleaning up is so boring. And it's so much more fun to go out there. And I really want you to go out there too and play on the swings.
yeah.
However, let's figure out how can we do this. And usually what it comes down to is, let me do it with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it really is about modeling the behavior that you want to see,
Hmm.
helping them along by doing it collaboratively,
Yeah.
as opposed to making, a punishment out of
Yeah.
bad behavior or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that would really be building and developing good habits. Part of that good habit is cleaning up after yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And we know from, I don't know if you read Charles Duhigg's book on, the power of habit, but he really deep dives into habits and what's
Mm.
required to build habits, and the joy of building really good habits
Yeah.
is that once it's a habit, you don't think about it anymore. It doesn't take any energy. It's just like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
So if you can do that with all of those things that you want your kids to develop good habits, be willing to do it with them.
Mm-hmm.
Show them exactly what to do, work with them to do it. Eventually, as they grow up, they get so used to doing it that they just start to do it themselves. And you one day will wake up and go, oh my God,
They're
they
doing
just,
the thing.
they
Yeah.
just did it. I didn't have to say a word. So part of the guidance approach is what we call self-started behavioral change.
Mm-hmm.
So do I want to have externally started behavioral change or self-started behavioral change? Do I want children to be self-motivated, or do I believe in external motivation? So we live in a society that's based in rewards and punishments, which is based in the idea that you change people's behavior by what you do to them,
Mm-hmm.
rather than creating the circumstances to support them to want to do the right thing. So self-motivation is when they choose to pick up the toys because that's what they want to do, or it's become a habit.
Yes.
They get up out of bed, they make the bed because that's become a habit.
Mm-hmm.
They get up and brush their teeth. That's the habit. They pack their bag. There's so many of these things that can just become good habits.
Absolutely. And I teach that a lot, is about creating rhythm routines. And so you're not always thinking about it, and your kids already know, right? So we do this after we do this, we do this after we do that. So nobody is like fighting. There's no fighting about brushing your teeth. We just go brush our teeth after we do breakfast. And so that's been very, very helpful for us.
Totally.
And so
oh yeah.
And I like the things you're talking about the habits. Like, they don't have to be a struggle because you started them. And you guys
and I mean, initially you're doing it with them.
Yeah.
And as long as you're there, chances are they're fine. I mean, they'll start doing what you're doing, and then they go out and play.
Yeah.
And it's just not a big hullabaloo because they develop the habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start wrapping it up. Is there anything that you would want to tell not a young mom, she doesn't have to be young, she's a mom, with
Mom of any age.
Yeah, mom
Children of any age.
Yes. Who feels like she's in a power struggle, and she wants to create good habits, and she wants to feel her kids' feelings and care about them and all that stuff. Is there any last piece of advice you'd want to give her?
Yeah, I mean, 75% of behavioral disruptions are retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. So that's whenever anyone comes to me, the first thing I always lean into is, am I hearing one of the R's? And of course, if it's 75% of the time that the behavioral disruption and the breakdowns have to do with the 3 R's, then one of the R's is probably present, if not all of them. I mean, I have people say to me all the time, oh God, I've got all 3. So you've got the retaliation, the rebellion, the resistance. So that's actually, I mean, we don't want it, but it's the easiest thing to change. You can eliminate all of that by moving to a guidance approach. That's all you have to do, is stop doing rewards and punishments. And instead, when you have the behavioral disruptions that you need to address, you address them from a guidance approach, which is the things that we've been talking about. Leaning in, seeing a no to you as a yes to something inside of themselves, perceiving the resistance as not disrespectful or punishable offenses, but that there's something going on internally that they have their heart set on, and they're having a hard time figuring out how to do that and this outer voices thing. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about the difference between request language, demand language. I mean, there are so many pieces to this. I have a whole model around, peeling the onion in terms of looking at any one disruptive behavior and kind of going through to assess it. So there could be other things happening aside from just the 3 R's, but most of the time it's the 3 R's, and we're looking at skills deficits, just building skills.
Okay, that's wonderful. So where can people find you, Katherine?
Conscious Parenting Revolution is the website. And if they want to go to freeparentingbook.com, my Amazon bestseller, 7 Strategies to Keep Your Relationship with Your Kids from Hitting the Boiling Point, I give that away. Okay. So they can go grab that.
Perfect. Okay. And so both of those links will be in the description of this video. And Katherine, thank you so much for being here with us.
This was lovely. So nice to meet you. And I feel we're really aligned.
I think so. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.